When we're working on our business, we tend to pay attention to all of the things that are outside of us. What is my strategy? What is my marketing message? What kind of habits have I put in place practicing the kind of thing that I'm working on? What is my structure? What tools do I have? What notes do I have in front of me? These tactics and these strategies absolutely help us, and we need to focus on those things. But there's something that we don't pay attention to usually that is actually going to have a really big impact. And what I'm talking about here is your inner game. What kind of things are going inside of you? Your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, your values. Those are the kind of things that we tend to just manage and that we think happened to us a lot of the time. At least that's how I've seen it so far. And I want to talk about managing that inner game. What kind of things, and I want to help you if we can today, look at what's going on with your inner game and what actions you can take. Because one of the reasons we pay attention to everything going outside of us is because we have this impression that we can control it. I can control my habits. I can control my strategy. I can control the choice that I make to practice. And we don't tend to think, I believe, that we have control over our inner game. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? These these responsive ideas and thoughts that are going through my head that are making me freak out about what's going on, right? How can we bring a semblance of control to our inner game? Because when we talk about getting in our own way, when we talk about that idea that we're getting in our own way, especially when it comes to your marketing, we're talking about your inner game. We're talking about the things that you're doing that are stopping you from showing up or stopping you from showing up in the best way you can. And so the question I've got for you today as we tune into this is, how is your inner game holding you back? And I'm going to go into this. We're going to talk about what I mean. I've got some examples, and we're going to give you a few strategies today to help you be more, maybe more manage your inner game better. I think that's what I'm going to go with here. How can we help you manage your inner game better so that instead of holding you back, maybe you're leveraging it in a way to help you actually succeed? Because it's what's going on inside of you that truly matters. And honestly, that's, even if you think about it, that's what's driving your desire to strategize, to show up, to do the activities, to practice, to put a plan in place, to put notes together. And I'm pointing, I mean my notes. Your inner game is driving all of that. And you can manage and control your inner game. You can make choices instead of doing the default things you've done all your life. And imagine if you took those choices and made them more intentional, if you did some things that were different but served you. As we look at where you're falling down, we can help you stand up in the inner game, in that inside game. And that is going to help you show up better with your outside game. Hey, Marcus, welcome. Thrilled that you're here today. Yay, I was hoping you'd be here. Um, so tell me in the chat, Marcus, and you can talk about whatever you want. Obviously, I'm talking about marketing, I'm talking about introverts, but we can talk about your health, we can talk about your life, we can talk about anything you want, because this applies everywhere. And in fact, the example I'm going to use is not going to be about marketing, at least the primary one that I'm leaning on. But I'd love to know, Marcus, and anybody else who's watching this, either live or recorded, tell me in the chat, how is your inner game holding you back? I would love to know, because then we can talk specifics. And when you know how it's holding you back, it puts you in a position to do something about it. So tell me in the chat, how is your inner game holding you back? If there's a certain context, tell me what that context is. Last week when we were here, Marcus and I were talking about health and video and stuff like that. We can absolutely talk about those things. I am here for it. So to clarify what I'm talking about, I want to bring in an example from a very different world. So I work with marketing. I help introverted business owners thrive in an extroverted marketing world. But I want to talk about ultra trail running. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this weekend I was at an ultra trail race. An ultra is anything, I think, anything over a marathon distance. And this was a 100-mile trail race. They also had a 100K trail race, which Marcus is in Switzerland. He can help me with this. I think that's 61 or 62 miles, but it's 100K was what they were doing. But I was there largely in attendance of the 100-mile trail race. I was hanging out at an aid station. And at this aid station, we're making sure they're getting fed, giving them water, checking in with the runners to see how they're doing, what they're doing, do they need anything? And this is where I really tuned in this weekend to the importance of that inner game. So the aid station I was at, like I said, it's a 100-mile race. We're going to focus on that for the sake of simplicity here. And I was at the 50-mile point and the 70-mile point. So what would happen is racers would come in, they'd take a quick break. They're supposed to take a quick break, go out and do another loop, and then come back in. And that point is like a 30-mile loop. So they come back and they're at a 70-mile point. So they've got 30 miles in there, right? And if you think about it, and you probably don't have to think too hard about this, they're suffering. Now, they've been training their butts off in such big ways, but they're suffering. They're in a lot of discomfort. They're managing their body, which they've been training, but it's still painful. If this was easy, we'd all be doing it. Then at the 50-mile point, they're like, okay, I need to eat. I need to fuel up. I need to get some liquids in me. But there's always this question: how am I doing? Am I okay? Does my body need anything? Can I keep doing this? And you've got some people that come in, they're like, nope, I'm good. It hurts, it sucks, but of course it does, and off they go. And then you've got other people who sit down and they're either close to or in tears, and they're like, oh my God, oh my God. We've got people who are feeling nauseous and not sure what to do to get that under control. We have other people that are just emotionally just racked. And that is where the inner game truly steps in. I mean, it's all the way around, right? Your inner game, if you're feeling good, you know it hurts, but nothing is off from what you're expecting, that inner game is just checking in and be like, yep, this is what I need to be, and off I go. But that inner game can become a negative spiral when the body's out of control and you don't know what you can do about it. And it can get worse. It's not just I feel nauseous, or oh my God, this hurts, or my knee hurts, or my foot hurts, or whatever's going on, or my back hurts, my hip hurts, or I'm just tired, right? If you get into a place, so there's two things I've got in mind. One is, what does my body need? Can I give my body what it needs? Or am I in a place where I need to stop before I hurt my body, in a bigger way? And then there's the negative spiral of, I can't do this. This shouldn't be so hard. I'm not one of these people. That negative place where you really start to go into a deep hole. And this is where the inner games start to play against you. Either you don't know what it needs and you kind of do a shot in the dark, but you're really worried. And that one's okay because you might stumble across something that works. Or you might decide that you've had enough, and that's a big struggle because you've got, not only do you have a goal of running, in this case, we're still talking about the ultra, you've got the goal of whatever you're doing, but you're also seeing other people doing it, right? Even in marketing, that's a huge thing. You're seeing other people doing it, and that's kind of what starts to generate the negative spiral. They're doing it, why can't I? I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? This is my 1,000th time doing this. Why do I suck so bad? That negative spiral is you playing against you. This is your inner game being unwieldy. And as long as you allow it to do this, where you can't lasso it in, it's going to take you down because you're not tuning into your body. You're just giving yourself this negative dialogue that's bringing you down. Tell me if this resonates in any way, this understanding. And what I mean, I'm not saying you've run an ultra, and I'm not saying that any of what I'm talking about is easy by any means. This is hard. It can feel impossible. Not just the ultra, but getting into this negative mindset, this negative space in your inner game where it's just tearing you down. How are you supposed to pick yourself up? Let's say we're talking about our marketing, or Marcus is talking about perfectionism is holding me back. Marcus, I want more specifics here. The more specific we can be, the better we can address it. But when you get into that negative spiral of that headspace and you're going, this shouldn't be happening, I can't do this, I'm not good at this, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not enough, right? When you deal with that, it can be even harder to get yourself into a place that you want to go and to get moving forward. But it can also be hard to know if you should, because you're not, like in the case of the ultra runners, they're not checking with their body because they're busy just getting their mind in gear and they're scared. Fear is a huge part of this inner game. But even in marketing, it's like, is it worth it? Do I need to be spending this much time? Maybe I'm not good enough for this. Maybe I can't do it. And we get into this fatalistic place, this catastrophic place sometimes, where it undermines our ability to show up. I was walking around the house today doing like 1,000 things. There's so many things on my to-do list today. And I was like, what am I thinking about going live on YouTube? Who was I? And what am I? And I was like, stop. No, I am here because I want to be here. And I've been thinking about being here. I'm showing up. And my rule, I said this last week, I'm not allowed to judge this for 3 months, which is July, August, a bit like October, right? And that's fine. It's fine. That's kind of my guideline to help me get my inner game on board, to shut it down. in that case, that negative stuff. So everything I'm talking about happens when we're marketing, when we're launching, when we're selling, when we're saying, hey, buy this thing from me, when we're showing up for my business. Do I, we were talking with Marcus last week about his videos. Do I show up? Do I continue to do my lives? Do I continue to do the thing that I said that I'm going to do because now I'm feeling bad about it and I'm not feeling motivated and, oh my God, is it even working? What am I doing? Why am I here? And you hear that negative spiral, us playing against ourselves. That's that inner game. And if you don't have a solid inner game, you can't have a solid outer game, because that inner game is going to undermine that outer game every single time. You have to get control of your inner game. You have to at least have a dialogue with that inner game. What am I doing? Put a plan in place. Help you get out of your own way so you can show up consistently. Because this is not about showing up today. It's about showing up for the next years that you're running a business. So what are you going to do with that inner dialogue? And the reason we're talking about this today, the reason this matters, is because introverts have an incredibly strong inner dialogue, and we are tuned into it. Now, every introvert is different. Not every introvert is like this, but it is likely that if you're an introvert, you've got this inner dialogue. I mean, everybody does, but you're tuned into it. The difference is introverts tend to be tuned into it a little bit more, because that's where we go when we find respite, we find comfort, we spend a lot of time there. So there's this inner dialogue. And if you're tuned into it and you can hear it, and you're in a position to do something about it. And that's what we're looking at. So it puts you in a position to manage it if you choose to do so. So, Marcus, what's the language around perfectionism that's holding you back? We need to look at what that dialogue is. What is the language we're using that's holding us back? And I'm going to get specific. I've got some examples from marketing coming up. But when we look at that inner dialogue, what is it about perfectionism? What is it about my marketing? What is it about this thing I'm trying to do that I am saying to myself that's a problem? How is it, or isn't it a problem? How is it serving you, and how is it not? Because if we're saying it to ourselves and we're saying it over and over, it's been serving us in some way, but it's also probably undermining us in some way. And if we can get that clear and shift our dialogue, we're going to have a better chance of success in whatever it is we're doing. I think my desk just arrived. Nope, it didn't. Okay, I'm waiting for a desk, and I was like listening to what do I hear? It's not my desk. So here's what I'm want to get into is you can choose to consciously control this inner dialogue, and it's going to help you make better decisions. Just like, hey, Dwayne, difficult question. Marcus, what's the difficult question? I want to know what you're saying to yourself. I don't know what question I asked. What do you, and Dwayne too, when you're in a negative spiral, when your inner game is playing against you, when you're in a negative spiral and not feeling good about, I'm going to talk marketing. Marcus mentioned perfectionism, wherever it is that your inner game might be playing against you. My question is, what are you saying to yourself at that point? What is the thing? Because if your inner dialogue is there, it's bringing in not just the words, but it's bringing in thoughts and feelings and idea and your voice in a way that's getting in your way. And we want to get in front of that. The inner dialogue your inner dialogue matters much more than you think. And it especially matters for introverts. And you can do something about this. You can take control of it. So I'm just gonna use an example here. In my business, I do what's called launching. When I open the doors to one of my programs, I always launch them. In other words, I'm in a window of time during which somebody can buy. And launching is incredibly stressful. There's a whole bunch of marketing that's going on to it. Suddenly you open the doors and you're like, somebody buy. And so often somebody doesn't, or somebody does. And it's just messy, and there's a lot of stress involved. And my inner dialogue at that point, my inner game matters so much. And I have a particular program that I have launched 14 times over the last few years. And the fact that I've launched it 14 times is part of what my methodology is for dealing with this freak out and this journey to finding the success that I've been looking for. And it's worked 14 times. I mean, I've launched successfully 14 times, very small at first, and then building to bigger and bigger launches, which was the goal. But I've learned along the way what the heck's going on in my inner dialogue, that inner game. And I've been managing it and learning to manage it through this journey of repeating the same launch over the years. And I want to put that on the table as an example because it takes practice and training. And in order to practice and train, you have to put yourself in the position to allow that inner game to have volume so you can deal with it. Your inner critic can be strong, right? So, Dwayne, I'm not talking about necessarily an inner critic. I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. Thank you for saying that. I'm gonna. So you probably do, and I think, Dwayne, that you are probably an introvert, having at least met you virtually. But so there's critic, and then there's the inner game of like just the overall language you're using, not just the one that's criticizing you, but just what is your language. It's a little bit bigger. The critic is one of many voices. So, Dwayne, I know that you go live, or when you've got something that you're selling, what is the language, not just the critic, but the language in general, in a bigger picture of positive, negative, if there's any positive? Look at it as a whole. When you get under stress, what is it telling you? That's the inner game. The game is the bigger picture of which the critic is one player. There we go. That's what we're trying to say. I would love to know. We are going off a default here that it's probably telling you something negative. And I want to talk a little bit about the choices you have. Because especially as you're going through this and doing something over and over, part of the journey is figuring out how to manage that inner voice as a whole to help it serve you, not undermine you, and help you stay in the game in a successful way. It takes practice, it takes training. In order to get that practice and training, you have to put yourself under duress to allow it to rise, and now you can deal with it. Chances are it's saying the same thing it has your entire life. But now you're under duress in your business. What are you doing with that? So that's what we're talking about. And I love that you use the word critic, Dwayne, so that I could speak to that. I hadn't even thought of that. So thank you. So what I want to talk about are 3 ways to manage your inner game. I am going to go back to my launch that I was talking about, my 14 launches, because it's just a great example for me to use. And because it is marketing, it allows me to stay on topic. So 3 ways to manage your inner game. 1, if you only focus on what goes bad, then you aren't preparing for what can go well. If you only focus on what goes bad, you are not preparing for what can go well. And there are some implications in there, right? This is about how you spend your mental time and energy. What are you spending your time thinking about? If you're like, oh, this could go wrong or that could go wrong, what am I doing? Oh my God, I need to shore up these walls. You're not spending any time managing what goes well so that if it does go well, you're not prepared. And you also, if you only focus on what goes bad or what's going to go bad, you're not allowing room for a positive outcome. You're not allowing energy for a positive outcome. And you could inherently drive a negative outcome because of it. So going back to the early days of these 14 launches, I was very lucky to be on a call with one of my friends, Lucy, who I was talking about my launch and I was putting strategy together. And I was in the middle of saying something and she stopped and she said to me, Susan, you know that you're only saying negative stuff right now, right? Do you hear that? And I stopped. And because it was in the moment, in context, I could stop and do a quick review and be like, oh my God. And it wasn't just that I'd said all these negative things, but I could feel this negative energy just percolating. I was feeding it with my fear. And so we stopped and we were like, what else could go right? What could go right? And I was like, somebody could buy. I could be doing something that resonates with somebody and they could buy now or in the future. I could learn something from this. And we just started listing all the positive things and you could feel that energy shift. And I am not saying that you don't pay attention to the negative stuff. It's always good. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But it's always good to at least have a plan, but don't spend all of your time there. In fact, ideally spend most of your time in the good stuff. Because it's not, when we talk about energy, we're not talking woo, we're talking how much energy and how are you feeling about it? What energy are you bringing to your planning? What energy are you bringing in your voice to the moment that you're talking to somebody? What energy are you bringing to the voice in your head as you're thinking about it? That matters because that will either support you or undermine you. Are you feeling negative about something because you've been sitting here talking to yourself negatively about it and therefore all the energy is negative? Or are you spending a quality amount of time thinking about the positive things to give yourself motivation? Motivation doesn't just come. Feeling like you can do something doesn't just come. You give that to yourself by how you speak to yourself. Your inner game matters because it sets the tone. So what are you saying and doing that's helping you set that positive tone? We can go back to Marcus said that perfectionism is holding me back. So first of all, how is perfectionism serving you? It's serving you because you have a sense of what perfection can look like. You've got something you're aiming for. But maybe it's also, what else can you say about, shifting your language? It's good enough. Instead of doing this ultimate perfection, can we change the language and say, this is good enough? What does good enough look like? So you can let it go, because it's when you put it out there that you can then move on to the next thing. What if it goes right? That's a great perspective. Marcus really likes that. Excellent. I'm glad that's just it. That was like a huge conversation shift for me when I was talking to my friend Lucy. It was such a big deal. It put me in a position to change my perspective, change my behavior, my actions, and everything changed. I really believe that that's when things began to shift for me, when I became aware of it. And the only reason I was truly aware of it and was like, oh my God, she's right, is because I was in the moment. That awareness in the moment was part of why it worked. So I invite you to tune into those moments. What did I just say to myself? How did that help? And how did that really drain my energy? And what am I doing? You want to support your energy and give yourself something positive to lean into. And it enabled me to stop worrying and start being more planful and strategic about the possibility that I was onto something if I would just let myself do it. If I would just let myself do this thing, I might be onto something. But as long as I undermine it, I'm going to stop it from succeeding. So if you only focus on the bad, you aren't preparing for what can go well. In other words, make sure you're spending more time preparing for what goes well. I'm not saying don't shore it up, do some stuff. What if something goes bad? But most of your time should be, okay, this is what's going to go well. This is how it's going to go well. This is what I want to do if it goes well. Here's how I know if it's going to go well. We all know how it's going to look when it goes bad. How do I know when it goes well? Let's get clear. And then what do I want to do about it? In terms of the what if things go bad, I invite you, this is number 2, to focus more on the learning than the outcome, especially when things go bad. And in my case, with my example, I did stop worrying about whether it would work, and I shifted that language. It wasn't, will it work? It was, what do I need to do to make it work? It wasn't, will it work? It was, what do I need to do to make it work? Because one thing I know about myself, and I proved it through these 14 launches, is if it didn't work, I'm just going to show up and hammer at it until it does. So what am I going to do if it doesn't work? I'm going to show up and do it again, and then I'm going to do it again because I'm going to figure it out. And going to number 2, this focus on the learning instead of the outcome, every time I would go back and be like, okay, what worked? What didn't work? Because it is not, this is huge, ready? It is not, did it work or didn't it work? It's what worked and what didn't work. It is not an absolute. It is a spectrum, a continuum, along which there are many different things. There are some things that worked and some things that didn't. What are they? And then celebrate and do more of the things that work and adjust the things that don't. And you can't adjust all the things that don't go well, so you find the big ones. And honestly, so I said 14 launches, every single time, even the ones that did incredibly well, I still came out of with a list of things to work on. And you just go on the biggest things, fix them, do it again. Okay, what else came up? Fix those, do it again. All the while focusing on what is working and a little bit of what isn't working and playing with it. But big goal, what went well, what didn't go well. You're hearing me here, right? My watch went off and now I know not to wear my watch while I'm doing this because apparently my watch thinks I'm walking. What went well? I picked up some steps. What didn't go well? They're not real. Okay. So we want to focus more on the learning and really get, it is never, I just want to say this again because I feel like this is so important. It's never, it went well or it didn't. It's what went well. I mean, you've got your overall outcome and how did you do relative to that? But there are always things to fix. There are always things to work on. It's never so absolute. And we want, I think it's a comfort thing. We want to lean into absolutes, but those aren't actually useful. It didn't go well or didn't. I mean, there's some of that, but we need to get into the details. Marcus says that it's not serving me. So I'm going to say 2 things. Whenever we do something, like procrastination and we do it and we have trouble not doing it, it's serving you in some way. And chances are, Marcus, it's serving you in that it's probably keeping you safe. Because if you're procrastinating, you're not doing the thing that the procrastination is stopping you from doing, like choosing to go live again, or doing the next project, or doing something that's scary or uncomfortable. So there's a way it's serving you, but it is also not serving you. And when you start paying attention to the things that it's not serving you with, that you can finally do something about it. And Marcus says, I procrastinate to counter the perfectionism, but that can get stressful. So, and I totally 100% agree with what you're saying there, Marcus. Perfection and procrastination are two sides of the same coin. And that coin is usually fear. It's usually we're afraid of doing something. So we tuck ourselves into perfection and procrastination. And it can get stressful. And at some point, Marcus, the pain of being where you are is going to be more than the pain of doing the thing that you're avoiding. And you're going to shift. I always advise to try to shift sooner than that because that can be very painful. So going back for a quick second, we've got two things that we've said. I'm just going to repeat myself really quick so we know where we are. If you only focus on if you only focus on what can go bad, you aren't preparing for what can go well. So take more time planning for what can go well with some strategic planning for what might go bad. Focus more on learning and less on the outcome. Obviously, you want to deal with the outcome, but focus on what you can learn, recognizing that it is not an absolute, that some things went well and some things didn't, and that's just always how it goes. And then I invite you to decide what you're going to do ahead of time if it goes badly. So here's what I mean. I think we all tend to wait. I did this with my early launches. Okay, I put my launch out. Let's see how it goes. And then you get to the end of it and you're like, okay, it didn't go well. What do I want to do? Or it went okay. I don't know. What do I want to do? We're deciding at the wrong time as though we don't have any control and it's happening to us. In our planning phase of whatever we're talking about, including the projects that Marcus is working on, we need to have a plan in place already for what we're going to do when it goes right and when it goes wrong, or with the things that go right and with the things that go wrong. Because we have control early on. We can put that plan in place. Can you also change it? Yes. You can get to the other side and be like, you know what, actually, based on what I've learned, here's what I want to do. But it can help from a feeling positive and hopeful perspective and an inner game perspective to have a plan in place before we get to the other side about what goes wrong. Let's go back to those ultra runners. Somebody has a tendency to feel nauseous, so having a plan in place and all the things she needs with her to help get in front of being nauseous, because once you're running and you're nauseous like that, it's probably hard to get in front of. I don't know. Somebody else who goes in a negative spiral has some mental scripts that she can say to herself. I'm good enough. I'm good enough. Yes, I can. Whatever the language is. What are the things you want to say in your inner game, especially under stress, to help you either make better decisions or just stay positive? Like, no matter what, I'm going to show up for myself. No matter what, I'm going to show up for my clients. I'm going to learn. I can't wait to learn what worked and what didn't so I can make this better. In my case with my launches, I usually went into a launch with a new date already set. I already knew that I was going to launch again. So that was just a done deal. It was actually really helpful because then I could just change all the information and start the next launch. But it also told me what trajectory I was going on no matter what happened. And that was a big piece of it for my launches, is I already knew that I was going to launch and when it was going to be. So I knew that there was my window of time for fixing what didn't work, celebrating what did, and picking it up again. So, and let me just take a look at my notes. This is about being strategic about your next steps, no matter how things go. And remembering to look at it as not an all or nothing, it did or didn't work, but as a journey in a much bigger picture. And I think that that's what we're talking about here, is to figure out what we want to do on the other side. Now, going back to Marcus, you're saying some important stuff here. The sooner we create something, the sooner we get feedback. Yes, turning it around. And I want to add to that, Marcus, because you're not the one to judge it. It's the person you're making it for that needs to tell you whether or not it's on the mark. I'm talking about from a marketing perspective. I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I think this will apply. Here's the other thing you said, and I'm not sure I agree. The trap is to plan the most when we have the fewest or the least amount of knowledge. I don't 100% agree with that, because you can change your plan. It can help to have a plan in place and to plan for both success and failure or some sort of balance in between because it's not one or the other, but to have an overall strategic plan, including, am I going to do it again? And if so, when? You can change the date. You can change the plan. I've totally done that. I've come out of the other side and been like, oh no, I need 2 more weeks because I got some stuff to do. You can do that kind of thing, but I don't think it's a trap. I think you have to be willing to make shifts and changes. And I'm not saying you have to plan what your next event is, but you can have a plan for how you want to address it. So here's an example. I'm going into a marketing thing, whatever we're talking about here in your case. And on the other side, I'm going to write down 5 things that went well and 5 things that didn't. That's my plan. And I'm going to make sure to focus on the big things. Here are the 3 things I'm worried about. So those are the things I want to monitor to see if they went well. Right. So I'm not so on board that that's a trap so much as we can trap ourselves. I think one of the mistakes we make along with absolutes are locking us into something because we decide it instead of being like, you know what, I'm going to play with that a little bit. I'm not so sure. So those are the kinds of things that I think that we need to think about when it comes to managing this sort of stuff mentally, that inner game. This, again, it's not about here's your actual plan. It's about getting your inner game, your mental, your mindset, your emotions, your energy to support the thing you're doing instead of setting them up to undermine you. That's what we're talking about here. And so if you only focus, so instead of focusing on what bad, prepare for what's going to go well. Focus on the learning in addition to the outcome with a plan going in that there's going to be something to learn here. I do that every single time I launch, and it serves all my launches. And then decide what you'll do next ahead of time so that you've got a plan in place to catch yourself on the other side. I have an example there. I'm going to say the example so I don't lose it, and then I'll go to what you said. And I see what you're saying, Marcus, and I totally am with you. Here's an example of the planning ahead of time. I know for sure, having done any launches, that I am just a wreck the next day, or not the next day, the night up. So I always do my launches at 11 a.m. my time. For me, that's my go-to time. It's just when I know I'm going to be sharpest and best to do it. It works with the time zones I serve. And I know that there's a high probability that I'm going to be a bit of an emotional wreck. And then I'm definitely, even if I'm not a wreck, because it went well enough that I'm feeling okay, I'm still not going to be able to focus. So I leave the rest of the day mostly open. I might work on projects. I might meet with a client. I will go for a walk, or I will go out to eat that night. I just need to decompress. And I often set up one-on-one calls with people to talk about, coming out of my launch, not always, but often. And if I do something like that, nothing starts till the next day because I need space. And so I gift myself that space. And it's a gift because I've just spent weeks and weeks getting ready for this launch. So one of the things I do as part of my planning is I gift myself the rest of the day after the launch. I very intentionally leave it open. And I mean like the masterclass I run or something like that, just to give myself the space to pull my shit back together because I'm going to need to. And so I gift that to myself. And I love thinking about it as a gift. I think that's part of it, is it's my little present to myself. And it's just time. I just give myself time and space. Marcus says, I didn't say not to plan, but we can get lost in the details. The farther away something is, the more vague the plan should be. 100% on board. And I'm not even saying it's be far away, right? As I'm getting into my launch, it could be 2 days from now, or it could be 3 weeks from now, right? And I'm going to be, the problem with things like launching and all these things in that, going into that absolute that we can get trapped in is, and I'm talking launching, so I'm talking people buying, I'm talking people making purchases. Nobody's buying, nobody's buying, nobody's buying, nobody's buying, nobody's ever going to buy again. Oh, somebody bought. Oh my God, it works. Nobody's buying, nobody's buying, nobody's buying. And so we're riding the moment we're in right now. And it's incredibly stressful. It's also not a great picture of what's happening. So if it takes me 3 or 4 weeks to complete a launch, I can't judge it. I can't decide that. Even though I'm on the roller coaster, I need to separate myself and be like, from an inner game perspective, be like, I'm just going to hold on to this and we'll see where things go. Don't judge it. Don't judge it. Don't judge it. And it's so hard not to judge it. This is hard stuff we're talking about. But you're right, Marcus, that the further away it is, the more vague the plan should be. And that's good because as we get closer, we can get more specific. And we're not judging it. We're not judging ourselves. We can kind of feel it out as we're going along. So I'm with you. I'm with you. And so I think what you were saying is the going back, the trap is to plan the most when we have the fewest, the least knowledge. Totally on board with what you're saying. I think that that's fair to say, and I think we're on the same page. So, um, going back to like the overarching picture, what we're talking about here is working with your inner dialogue, your inner game to help you create a mindset that supports you and helps you show up at your best and does the least amount of harm and doesn't undermine you. So you're not ending up in this negative spiral of self depreciation, that you're giving yourself, excuse me, the opportunity to show up your best by feeding yourself the things you need mentally and emotionally. That is the inner game we're talking about. And so I want to know what's one thing you're going to do in your inner game to help you in the best way that you can. What's something you're going to do in your inner game? It might be something we've talked about. It might be something, this is not a complete list. It might be something else, but I want to know what's one thing you're going to do in your inner game, in your mindset, in the way you think about these things to help you show up better for yourself, to help you show up better for your business, to help you show up better for your marketing. The worst thing we can do is sit in this isn't going to work. I'm not built for this. This isn't okay. The best thing we can do is show up for ourselves and say, I'm here for it. I'm here for me. I'm here for my business. I need to figure out what's going to work. None of us can do this out of the gate. It's going to be a journey, and your journey is going to be unique to you. And the best thing you can do is show up for yourself in a way that supports your ability to do it. I know for sure, and I know this out of experience, but I also know this out of my personality. It's not, will it work? It's, what am I willing to do to make it work? And my willingness is that I show up and I think of it as I'm going to beat on it, like I'm going to beat it into submission. But I'm just going to show up and just ask the big questions and figure out what works and work on it until I figure out what does work and look at it analytically. Look at it, and analytically can feel like non-emotion, but you also, your emotions are a part of that. But really, not what I'm trying to say is I'm not going to be like, oh my God, it didn't work. It's going to be like, what didn't work? What can I see in the data? What can I see in something somebody said? What didn't work? And what can I do different based on how I showed up to maybe make it work better? There's content that I've added to my masterclass. There's things that I've pulled out of my masterclass. There's language I've shifted. There's an overarching strategy that every time I do it, moving mostly in the right direction, every now and then pulling back and being like, oh, don't do that again. That showing up over and over is me hammering at it until it works. So that's what I do is I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up again. I'm going to look at it analytically, come up with a top list of the biggest things I can do. It's not usually a huge list because you can only do so much. And then from there, I do those things and I run it again. And I do some more things and I run it again. And I'm just sometimes making my best guess. Other times it's analytics. Other times it's kind of a vibe or an emotion I feel, and you get to choose and flip it around. And as Marcus is saying, plan as you go along, and put it out there so you can get the feedback so you can do it again. Because if you don't, then you don't know what to work on, right? So you've got to do all these things. Anyway, tell me what you're going to do next time that you're putting yourself out there and you need to show up for yourself. What's that thing going to be? I would love to know. Put it in the chat. I hope you found this helpful. I was at the run this weekend and I was like, oh my God, the inner game, it's so much more powerful. I said it to somebody. I was like, your inner game, that's where you need to train, because when your inner game is on board, your outer game is going to come back in line. And I just, yeah, it was hard to watch some people like really kind of losing it, but I didn't blame them. They were running 50, 70, 100 miles. Of course you're losing it. The question is, what do you do to keep it together? What can you do? That's part of the training. I hope you found this helpful. I hope that there's something in here. I'd love to know what something in here might be that you're going to use. And I will be back again next week for a little bit more. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me, Marcus and Dwayne, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.